This video will show you how to replace the center link on a GMC Sierra 2500. This will be accessed from under the front of your vehicle. Let's get into it. Okay friend, let's get started on our job. The first thing we have to do is safely raise and support the front end of the vehicle so the wheel's off the ground. Once you've done that, if you have a hubcap, we're going to remove that. That can be done using a 22mm socket. After that, we'll remove all 8 of our 22mm lug nuts as well so we can remove the wheel. We'll remove our center cover using a 22mm. After you've removed that, go ahead and use a 22mm for each one of your 8 lug nuts. Then we can get the wheel off of here. Now that we have the wheels off, the next thing we want to do is remove our outer and inner tie rod ends. We can see the outer here leading to our steering knuckle. The inner tie rod end is attached to the outer, but it's also attached to our center link. Let's use a 21mm for our mounting nut. Once you have that broken free, go ahead and start it back on a couple threads. We're going to tap on the steering knuckle with a hammer, causing vibration. This should want to drop down for us. There we are. Now just a quick inspection of the outer tie rod end to confirm we've caused no damage here. Now that we have that separated, we are not removing the outer tie rod end from the inner tie rod end. We're going to be removing the inner tie rod end from our center link. To do that, let's make our way safely under the front of the vehicle. Directly on the front, you're going to find you have a plastic skid shield. As you make your way rearward, you're going to find that you have a metallic shield. Let's start removing the pair. As for each of these shields, you're going to be using a 15mm for your mounting hardware. The front shield has 5 pieces of hardware. We'll make sure we're holding that shield. Go ahead and remove the shield from the vehicle. Now we're moving to our next shield. This one's held in place with 4 15mm headed mounting bolts. Now that I have the shields out of the way, I can focus on removing the inner tie rod end from my center link. To remove the inner tie rod end, you're going to find that you have an area that you can grab onto using some long pliers. It's right behind the boot, closest to the center link. There's that. Of course, we're going to go over to the other side of the center link. We're going to be removing the inner tie rod end from there as well. And when you set them aside, just make sure you make a clear marking so you know exactly which side each one of these units goes on. Now that we've removed both inner tie rod ends from the center link over towards the passenger side of the center link, we're going to start removing our idler arm mounting hardware. You can see the 21mm mounting nut here. We also have to dislodge our front steering stabilizer shock as well. Let's start with the idler arm. Now continuing on, we need to separate this joint. If you use a pickle fork, you could potentially cause damage. So we have a separator tool here. This is going to slide over the bar, and then this is going to hit right up against our idler arm stud. And then we'll carefully start separating this. That's what we're looking for. We'll leave this nut on here a couple threads for now. Now we'll leave this in place. Let's continue on to removing our stabilizer shock from the center link next. As you make your way up above the top of the center link, you're going to find the mounting hardware for this. We're using an 18mm to remove the mounting nut. There's that mounting nut. Just a quick inspection of that, we'll set it aside. Now to be able to separate this, I want to continue on with a separator tool as well, but what you're going to find is that you don't have enough room in this area to install a separator tool and separate this. So we're just going to take our mounting nut, we're starting it back on a couple threads here. Let's make our way all the way over to the other side of the center link next, over towards where it connects to our pitman arm. Now as we move over towards the other side of the vehicle, we can see where our pitman arm is, just in front of our front differential. We'll be using a 21mm to remove the hardware. Let's start that back on there a couple threads here. Now we have a separator tool. This is going to go over the center link and we're going to press directly against that pitman arm stud. Let's apply some pressure here. Now we'll reach up, we can take hold of the center link. We're going to remove each piece of hardware that we've already loosened, and we can start lowering this down so we can gain access to the upper hardware for our stabilizer shock. Use our puller tool here. You could also try tapping on this with a hammer to break it free. Now keep in mind, this is the last piece of hardware holding our center link in place. We still have our mounting nut on here loosely so it will not fall off and potentially hurt us. There it is, friend. Now let's get this over to the bench. We're going to have a quick look at our original center link in comparison to the brand new one. Looking at either end of it, you're going to find that you have a grease fitting that needs to be transferred over. For this, I'm just using a wire brush. I'm going to attempt to clean around the grease fitting. We'll use an 8mm to unscrew this and transfer it over to the brand new center link. Here's our small grease fitting. Just go ahead and give that a quick inspection. We'll start that in by hand, and we'll snug it up. Okay, right there feels like it wants to bottom out. I'm only going a little bit further. Obviously, we do not want to break this off in the brand new center link. Repeat the process for the other side of the center link assembly. Okay, bottomed out. Just a tiny bit further there. That's secured. Now we can dispose of our original center link and we'll make our way back over to the vehicle. Prior to installation of any brand new part, we want to make sure we clean and inspect our mounting areas. Over towards the driver's side, this is where we have our pitman arm. We want to make sure that this stud is still in good usable order. This looks good. Let's make our way over towards the other side of the vehicle. This is where we have our idler arm. And we have our stabilizer shock. Now we can install our brand new center link. Of course, since we are installing it to our front stabilizer shock first, I like to have this in the upside down position. You can tell because I have my grease fittings facing up instead of down. The stabilizer shock stud is going to go into this port here. We can align that. Now once you have that aligned, I'm going to try to rest this in a position that I can easily hold it. Start installing my mounting nut. At this point, we can snug up the mounting nut. The torque for this will be 30 foot-pounds. Continuing on, we'll need to pivot this so it's in the proper positioning with the grease fittings facing down. We're going to align it with our idler arm and with our pitman arm over on the driver's side. Looks like I'm aligned, so let's press it up. While we gently hold pressure, we'll continue on with our two mounting nuts. We have one for the pitman arm and of course one for the idler arm. Start on our mounting nut. After starting on each piece of hardware, we're going to snug them and then we're torquing both of them to 46 foot-pounds. That's the same for the idler arm over on the passenger side and the pitman arm over on the driver's side. Once they're both started on and snug, we're torquing them to 46 foot-pounds. Once you've completed that, it's time to start installing your tie rod end assemblies. Now we marked our assemblies so we know which one goes where. On the end with the threading that goes into the center link, go ahead and use a little red thread locker. We're going to start this in by hand and then we're going to snug it up. We're using our long pliers for this. Right there's bottomed out. Let's just make sure that's nice and tight. We want to make sure that cannot loosen up on us while we're driving down the road. Now let's reattach our outer tie rod end to the steering knuckle. We're going to flex things as necessary. We'll get the stud up and through the bottom. Along the top, we have our 21mm mounting nut. Once we have it snug, the torque for that will be 44 foot-pounds. Lined up. If you find when tightening the tie rod mounting nut, the stud spins, apply upward pressure on the tie rod end. Just going to use a long pry bar for this. Now that we have this side tie rod ends in place, you want to go over to the other side of the vehicle, repeat this exact same process, and of course, make sure you torque that tie rod to 44 foot-pounds as well. After installing the other side tie rod end assemblies, of course, we want to make sure we apply grease to each one of our two grease fittings, one along each side of the center link. When we apply grease, we're feeling along the inner tie rod end boot. We want to make sure there's grease going into it as needed. There we are. This one looks good. Of course, we're going over to the other side to repeat this process. Now, one last quick inspection in this area, and we can reinstall our shields. We're starting with the rearward shield. We have our 15mm headed mounting bolts. We're going to start in each of them before tightening any of them. They're all started in. Let's snug them up. Double check to make sure that's secured in place. We'll continue on with the forward shield next. Same process for this shield. We're starting in each piece of hardware before tightening any. Now it's time to reinstall that wheel. Once you have the wheel in place, start on all 8 of your 22mm lug nuts. We're going to lightly bottom them out. We'll get the wheel safely back down on the ground and then torque each of them to 140 foot-pounds. Now I've got the wheel back on the ground. Let's go ahead and torque each of these lug nuts to 140 foot-pounds in a crisscross manner. Torqued. If you have a center cover, install that now. We'll get the center cover in place. We're starting on each one of our caps using our 22mm socket here. Just snug them up. Double check to make sure it's secured in place. Now we can get the wheel in place. Once your wheel's rested in position, continue on to all 8 of your 22mm lug nuts. We're going to lightly bottom them out. We'll get the wheel safely back on the ground and torque each of them to 140 foot-pounds. We've got the wheel safely on the ground. Let's torque each one of our lug nuts to 140 foot-pounds in a crisscross manner. Torqued. If you have a center cover, install that now. We'll get this in place. We're using our 22mm socket to lightly bottom these out. Double check to make sure it's secured in place. Okay friend, we finished our installation. Now the next thing you want to do is take your vehicle for a road test, listen for any odd noises, and get yourself a 4-wheel alignment. Thanks for watching.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.